everybody. I'm John Hucker, president of the Swiss Finance and Technology Association. We're back again today with a virtual roundtable in place of our usual events. We're taking the opportunity of the crisis not only to fill YouTube and your time with lots of conversation, it's really a great opportunity to bring together members of the community. Today we are talking to people from Geneva, not only about how Corona is impacting their business, but what are the latest developments as they push through this crisis, and what is going on more broadly in the local community. And I thought the best way to do that would be to start by introducing our Western chapter head, Gabriel Lamon. By day, he is a leader within UBS's local business, but he uses a lot of his spare time to help us build the community in Geneva and beyond, Lausanne, elsewhere in the West. So Gabriel, can you maybe say a few words to introduce yourself and talk about what you're doing with the Geneva chapter, the Western chapter, excuse me.
Thank you. So hi, everybody. So my name is Gabriel Lamon, and I'm in charge for Swiss Finance Technology Association for the Western chapter. So mainly means Geneva and Lausanne. On a daily basis, I'm working as a wealth management advisor combined with a role related to digital transformation. So it's a combined role. And yes, now we are working, as you can see, I'm working from home. So happy to be with you today. And yes, that's all about me. With a Western chapter. So mainly it's for about 2 years now. We are focused on two types of events. We are making a small meetup conference. We expect to do this every 2 months on many topics. Could be blockchain, could be sometimes has been crypto, could be wealth management, or also RegTech regulations. So that's one pillar of our event. On a monthly basis, we are also conducting some afterwards, which are the opportunity to network, to develop the community, to be open to new participants and new members to join the community. And this is a very successful event and people really enjoy this. We are mainly doing this in Lausanne, and we are thinking to extend this in other locations in the Western chapter. On the other side, we try also to start some collaborations with other local associations. So we are in touch with associations like Geneva Microlabs. We are also in touch with local representatives from the Crypto Valley and so on. So the idea is really to work collaboratively and to build up the future for the finance industry, which is now, I think, powered by technology and innovation.
Great. Well, thank you, Gabriel. I want to introduce the first of our guests, Seamus from Medico, and to introduce it a bit, I think Medico is a company that's been active in the western half of Switzerland for quite a while, but also internationally as a real example of great Swiss fintech and crypto technology. So, Seamus, you've obviously been with the team for some time now, being a big part of its growth. Can you tell us a bit more about what's going on there?
Yeah, sure. So, as you mentioned, we are in the Romandie side of Switzerland. We're based in Lausanne, just outside of Geneva. Similar to everybody else, though, there's nobody in the office right now. Our team, which is about 25 people, is all working remotely. Personally, I'm in Montreux, overlooking the lake Lamon and the mountains behind me. So it's not all dire. It's a pretty nice location to be. But Mitaco is been around since 2015. We're really the premise was really to design institutional digital asset management solutions specifically targeted on banks. We launched our main product, Silo, in 2018, and it is now become, I think, one of the, in terms of institutional adoption, one of the most broadly adopted institutional operating systems for digital assets. And it's really about delivering kind of next generation security, flexibility, resiliency. It's been designed for banks, exchanges, and infrastructure providers, and it's a full technology stack for them to integrate cryptocurrencies, tokens, and distributed ledgers into their core infrastructure. So to date, we have a number of, we work with a number of clients, both, as John mentioned, in Switzerland, in jurisdictions where the regulators have been supportive of these emerging asset classes. We've had a particular traction. Switzerland's been obviously a starting point there. We support infrastructure providers like Avaloq, the core banking provider. Our solution's been deeply integrated as a module in their solution. Custodigit, which is obviously a subsidiary of Swisscom, offers basically a kind of key management service based on Silo, our main solution. Signum Bank is one of their first clients there. Gazprom Bank is one of the first clients for Avaloq. Outside of Switzerland, we've had traction in jurisdictions, as I mentioned, that have been kind of given very clear guidelines for banks in terms of regulatory framework and licensing regime. Germany is a good example. BaFin's been very maybe lagging FINMA, but I think they've caught up and the banks are moving potentially more quickly. So API banks like Solaris Bank have implemented our solution, and Börse Stuttgart, one of the second largest legacy exchange there next to Deutsche Börse, also has launched a digital exchange, and their custody is based on our infrastructure. So similarly, we work with global custodian banks out of Singapore and retail banks out of Singapore as well. So it really for us has been, we really are kind of Swiss-based, but we've got a global footprint, particularly strong in Western Europe and Asia.
Great. Thanks for that introduction, Seamus. Really a broad overview of what Medico has done. It's amazing. We got to know the company just about, I think, 4, maybe 5 years ago when it was getting started. So to hear the breadth and the scale of what you're now working on and to see how far crypto has matured has really been remarkable. I think we're going to hear more of the same. I'm going to jump next to Arno with Mount Pelerin. Arno, you're another case of a local leader who's been doing this for a few years. Can you tell us a bit more about what you're doing now and how you got to the place you're at with Mount Pelerin?
Yeah, sure. Hi. Yeah, sorry for the video, but I'm actually outside on the mobile, so I cannot really put the video.
Good for you.
Yeah, so I'm Arnaud Salmon. I'm the CEO and founder of Mount Pelerin and IBANI. On Mount Pelerin, we are mostly active on creating a new type of financial institution based in Geneva. And today, most of our clients are around tokenization and tokenization of real assets, such as shares, bonds, funds, etc. This is an exciting topic that is actually popping up this year. And there is a lot of traction in this market. And things are going quite well, obviously, until the coronavirus came, because that's obviously putting quite some pause in some of the activities. But nevertheless, we still see that it's becoming like the topic today, how to digitalize the entire process of the bank. How can we actually use blockchain to reduce the operational cost of managing the trading of assets, etc., etc. So we are now working on a very interesting proof of concepts to actually make those tokens even bankable, so that you can even own it within your own e-banking, etc., etc. On the IBANI side, it's been a very exciting years. IBANI, just to recall, it's a very simple tool to transfer and exchange money internationally using dedicated IBANs for each and every relationship you might have. And today, obviously, a lot of the users that comes to us are the cross-border workers. They have a simple need to exchange Swiss franc for euro because they work in Switzerland and they live in the Eurozone. And that is actually going quite well, very, very well, actually. Even during the coronavirus crisis, people still need to exchange money, and even more if they cannot go to cash exchanges. And now we are onboarding as well a lot of companies that have a need to have more transparent reporting on their currency management and how to collect dollars from some of the clients in the dollar zone and to pay some suppliers in the Eurozone. And instead of mixing it up within their own bank, they actually use us as a proxy accounts to do that, so that we can reduce their cost, obviously, but as well bring transparency in the reporting.
Great. Thanks, Arno. Again, amazing to see how things have matured and great to hear that you're getting the traction this year despite the crisis. A bit of a newer member, somebody I've met in the last year, is Julien Lapique, who's with Uncrypted again in Geneva. And Julien, I wanted to give you the last honors of introducing yourself before we talk about a few things.
Thanks, John. Hi everyone. So my name is Julien Lapique, and as you mentioned, working at Uncrypted, which is a consultancy specialized in digital transformation and blockchain. We are focusing mainly on the banking and commodity trading sectors, and where we advising, I would say, traditional players in order to help them to better understand how they can leverage the potential of blockchain. So that goes mainly on the side of optimization of their current processes, but also helping them to understand what they can do from the ideation stage to a successful implementation. It's, as you can imagine, for this player, it's not a walk in the park. So there are a lot lot of different milestones that need to be met, and we advise them on their journey. We mainly active in Geneva and in Asia. So in Geneva, we have been working with Coventis. We had them set up for the past 2 years. So it's a blockchain initiative led by ADM, Bunge, Cargill, and other trading companies, where they're trying to optimize their post-trade settlement process using blockchain technology. So it's one of the key projects we're working on, showcasing the use of private blockchain in order to optimize the operation. We currently, or I will say we were expanding as well in Asia, working with some banks in Thailand and in Hong Kong. As you can imagine, due to the coronavirus, we have had to put a bit of a stop to that. So it's something that we'll pick up in the next few months when things will get better.
Great. Well, I think we heard a couple of different angles from the team about how the scene has been maturing in recent years in Geneva. I wanted to ask everybody, what's your take? Is Geneva a vibrant fintech community right now? Are there some gaps? Are there some really great cases? We talked a lot last year about Libra, but I have to admit that seemed like a bit of an exception to what the everyday story is. And you guys seem like three very involved people who would be just the right ones to ask what are the advantages and maybe some of the weaknesses right now about the Geneva fintech scene.
Yeah, no, I think like Geneva is the perfect place to be. To be honest, it's an international city by nature. It brings people from all around the world. It's a very well-known financial center. So obviously that's one of the great places to be with Zurich, and we truly believe that there is a lot of things to do as well. The private banking sector is also now trying to evolve into innovation and trying to pick up on those topics. So yeah, no, I mean, that's clearly one of the best places to be today in the world. Yeah.
Anything, not necessarily critically, but do you think there could be anything that's enhanced about Geneva that would make it even better?
Well, to be honest, I'm a kind of a libertarian. So I mean, it's up to the actors to do it, yeah. So I mean, it's not something that should come from the politicians, or it's not something that should come from above or anything like that. But I think like there are like great initiatives such as the one you are running with the SFTA, and people have a lot of goodwill to make it happen. So no, I mean, I think things are super positive today.
Well, thanks, Arnaud. That was nice of you to say, and good to hear about Geneva. I think it's certainly been coming up and up in terms of the output and the traction that companies like you have had. So great to hear that also from you. Julian, do you see it the same way? I saw you smiling a few times. Is that because you agree or because you have maybe a different view?
No, well, I'm quite positive as well. I will tend to agree with Arnaud that indeed Geneva is the right place to be. Yes, you mentioned Libra for last year, but like more generally speaking, the ecosystem around blockchain and crypto that has been created, Geneva over the past few years, they managed to, I would say, to catch up a bit. Let's say that 2-3 years ago, maybe Zug and Zurich, they were a bit more mature about this technology and the different initiative. But I think that for the past 18 to 24 months, we have seen Geneva picking up a lot of momentum, a lot of great initiative decided to incorporate in Geneva. So yes, Libra, Coventis, Comgo and others. So I think that due to the very positive reaction from the regulatory bodies that we see in various industries, I think it's still the place to be. If I were to put a small caveat, it would not be on Geneva, it would be on the Swiss side itself, that it's still sometimes difficult to align the initiative between Geneva and Zurich. There is sometimes a bit of competition between the two sides of Switzerland, whereas if we were to act as one country, I think we'll be able to be even more successful than we are today.
Yeah, I would truly agree. I know a few years ago we hosted some events around Cybos when it was in Geneva, the big conference from Swift, and it was a great example of how Geneva can be, right alongside Zurich and do some things even better. And I think Libra shows that again. So great to see less competition and more co-opetition, let's say, which is very Swiss as well. So great point there from you, Julian. And last word maybe on the pros and cons of the current state of things. Seamus, you're a Canadian like myself. Can you tell us maybe how long you've been in the scene in Geneva and what your thoughts are?
I've been over here since December 2018. So we're based in the region. So obviously, we think has a lot of positive attributes. I mean, we just announced cooperation with the EPFL, for example. So I think there's some great talent, there's a good ecosystem. And I think, you've got companies like Libra probably relocating in the region for specifically that reason. No, but our clients are primarily banks, and I would say basically, when you look at Switzerland as a whole, banks are conservative. I think the banks in Geneva are probably the most conservative in that context. I mean, they are private banks, so they're not necessarily going to lead by innovation. They're going to respond to their client demands, and typically the clients are conservative. So we did see, we're focused on delivering, infrastructure for cryptocurrencies and digital assets. Clearly, there's a lot of POC interest. Particularly, most of our clients go straight to production, and we haven't really seen the client base in Geneva really moving there just yet. There was obviously, they had a lot of kind of client push in 2017, the era of the ICO that didn't end very well. A lot of their clients getting burned. They definitely looked at it from an infrastructure perspective, but I think the flash was over so quickly they never really got traction. So I think that's making them a little more cautious. We're optimistic, though, that the asset class as a whole, particularly when you see basically all this global stimulus and spending and on the fiscal side, I think there's potentially growing interest in the crypto side of the business, not just the tokenization side of the business. And when we've talked to banks, typically the business case they've all made has been premised on crypto assets because it's an existing asset class in the space. And that's kind of their first business case, and then they look longer term at the tokenized assets because that's still one that it's more of a longer term play. There's a lot of regulatory issues around it and how you build a regulated businance. So I think there is the chance that we could see a resurgence of demand from private banks in the region. But for us so far, we've had, as I mentioned in the introduction, a lot of our traction's been global. Other jurisdictions where the banks are potentially more aggressive building infrastructure.
That's really interesting to hear, Seamus. I want to circle around on two other really important topics before I ask for some general comments from each of you. The first one, I guess, is the regulatory framework. Our association has done a lot in the last year, as well as all the other players and of course, the regulators on the distributed ledger technology and also the FinTech license. Given this group, I think DLT frameworks were probably much more relevant. I was wondering if you could each say a few words on your perspective on regulation, the jurisdiction here in Switzerland, and your perspective on how things are going and where they need to go, let's say.
So as you rightly mentioned, I think the DLT framework that has been published like few months or few years ago, depending if you look at the draft that was published, has been one of the most comprehensive that we have seen compared to the other countries. I think it has been a bit of not a bold move initially from Switzerland, but knowing the Swiss authorities was not an easy move to make, to go into such a level of details of what can be qualified as a DLT. We have seen as well the different ICO guidelines published in Geneva and in the other cantons. So I think they have been very, very proactive. They have been also very open to the idea of trying. Singapore has had a bit of the same, I would say, attitude, and it was very positively perceived. So I think from a regulatory standpoint, we may be not there yet fully, but we still helping solutions to mature in a safe environment.
Arnaud, is your view the same on that one?
Yeah, pretty much. To be honest, I would be even more positive. So, I mean, today the framework in which we operate in Switzerland is pretty well defined. There is no surprises, I would say. Things are quite clear. And if you think about tokenization of assets and in particular, things are extremely clear in the way it is treated by FINMA. Tokens are just, technological vehicles. What matters is the underlying assets, which has been well defined since ever. So things actually, there is Switzerland is technological neutral, and there is no real challenges here, to be honest. And that's why we like this approach. So there is no need for specific new law like they did, for example, in France, like they did how to maintain your shareholder lists on a DLT. They made a special law in France, which is great, but at the same time creates more burden because you have to treat it in a different way than you would treat it normally. Whereas in Switzerland, it's totally different. In Switzerland, we just say that blockchain is the ledger, you have tokens as a unit of accounts, and you still have the same obligations as a company to maintain the shareholder list in the same way. And things are quite clear. If you think about other type of assets, it's the same. It's a programmable vehicle. You have to enforce to make sure that you can enforce the same rules. And as long as you comply with the existing rules, there is nothing to change. There is no need for new framework or anything like that. So I believe it is pretty clear, pretty fine for any company in the world that wants to do business in Switzerland. And that's why we actually like to be here. Of course, where there are some other type of businesses such as custody that might have different view on that, but I mean, for our point of view, this is really the perfect place to be.
Great vote of confidence there, Arnaud and Julian. Seamus, you said some very similar things talking about your business and why you're here. Anything you wanted to add on the topic of regulation and how it's evolving here in Switzerland?
No, I mean, I think FINMA has been ahead of the curve. I mean, I think that they've defined kind of the global roadmap for other regulators, and I think they've done a very good job. Taxonomy, definitions, clarity about how banks can operate in this space. I think it's been very supportive. I think the one issue is it's a conservative banking sector, so if other jurisdictions are starting to catch up a bit. But I think, and you've got some very large players here that view this space more as a kind of incremental efficiencies. I mean, the big guys have a big footprint, and they're not going to give that up necessarily that easily. So we do have some partners like Signum that are really trying to use this as transformational. We need more players like that in the market. But I think the opportunity, the regulator, I think, is fully supportive for that.
Gabriel, I wanted to get you back into the conversation. We talked about Libra. I know you've been involved in other circles of discussion, for example, with Geneva Macro Labs and a lot of discussions they've hosted. What do you think the regulatory story looks like? How have you heard feedback from the community in the West?
Okay, so yeah, I'm in touch with some people in the field, but first of all, I'm absolutely not a regulation specialist. What I can say is okay. First feeling is Switzerland remain very open-minded for making regulation to evolve. On the other side, the latest information I heard was also related to Libra. That now seems the regulation was a bit on hold, waiting for new development, and that the government would have a more clear position. But again, I'm not really the specialist about Libra and regulations. So I'm very interested. But
thank you for the general perspective, though. I wanted to start to close things up, and I guess I'll give you each a choice. We kind of have the current crisis. You guys can tell us about whether or not it's impacting you and how, or hopefully you have other business and you can tell us a bit about what the current focus is in the next 3 months with your particular business. Why don't I start again with Julian, and can you tell us, what are you going to be working on for the next 3 months at Uncrypted?
Thanks. So a few things. I think I'm going to tackle both topics because they strongly linked, honestly. We're going to keep up the good work with some of the current clients that we have. We see that there is a lot of resilience in that sense, that the initiative that have passed the POC stage, clients want to continue developing it. It's not because of the crisis that they want to stop everything. So maybe if you're just on an early assessment on how to use the technology, maybe it will be put to a stop. But for the main clients that we have, we see that they want to continue this type of initiative, which we see as a great news. What's very interesting due to the current situation is we do realize that this traditional player were not ready for what's happening today. So the entire lockdown, the need for having digital, for the call that we're having today, for example, it's something that will not be easy in most of the companies that we work with. This need for digital collaboration has been very strongly hinted over the past few years, and now it's come to a realization that a lot of the companies were not ready. They didn't have the right level of readiness in order to tackle it. So I think it's going to be a great opportunity for a lot of fintech, because now the main players have realized that there is a need for digitalization. They didn't have a choice for the past few months than to digitize themselves in order to survive. So I think that once all the dust settled in the next few months, we're going to see a lot of willingness from this player to partner with fintech solution in order to leverage all the blockchain and digital potential that these fintechs can offer.
Very interesting insights there, Julian, capturing both the threat and the opportunity, I think. Seamus, can I go to you next and ask how it's impacting things at Medico, or what you're working on right now?
I mean, most of what we're focused on right now is delivering kind of client pipeline. We've got a lot of clients that are signed that are not yet announced, and we've got deliveries in the coming months, and also product improvement. So that's been our main focus. We've got a lot of ongoing discussions with the banks. We haven't yet seen if the recent events are going to impact that. I've been surprised how smoothly some of the larger banks have transitioned to remote working. A few years ago, I would have said that's not possible, but it seems to have been moved fairly smoothly. So that hasn't impacted things yet, but obviously the economic impact is still just being learned. So we'll see how that impacts potential budgeting or prioritization. I haven't seen that yet, but so far the feedback's positive. Most projects are still going ahead. We haven't had any existing sort of dialogues around digital assets or crypto change. Markets like Germany, still there's a lot of projects and RFPs going on. So I think on the whole, we're still very constructive, but a little bit cautious given the background is fairly negative right now.
I don't know if I can ask, are you guys doing any fundraising? Has it impacted, let's say, the venture capital community and that side of things? We hear a lot of that.
Well, I can't comment specifically just yet. I mean, I think we should have an announcement fairly soon in that. It should be positive, but I would say it's tough out there. If you don't have existing clients and revenues, I think it's a very tough environment, I think. Basically.
Yeah, that makes sense. Arnaud, do you want to pick up on any of those messages or add anything to the question of Corona or business of growth as usual? What are you focused on?
Yeah, well, I think pretty much everything has been said already, but I mean, same here. I mean, we see also that as an opportunity, simply because it forces most of the organization to embrace the digital movement, to actually get into better processes, to improve the operations, and that is actually clearly the trend that we see, like banks in Geneva especially, they have a higher cost of running the bank. They need to reduce the operational cost. They need to actually reinvent themselves, and that's actually might be a driver for to make it faster. So we clearly see that as an opportunity. Obviously, just like everyone else, we're slightly impacted by the fact that some of our clients are running on a slower pace because they have other things to focus on. They have some emergency treats. Some are even having troubles, to be honest. But at the same time, like we are broadening the scope of our clients. We are an international company by nature. So clearly we see that as an opportunity more than a threat. And as for fundraising, obviously that's the big topic for most of the startups today. That creates obviously a pause in most of the discussions, but at the same time, proper companies should also manage to get some incomes to compensate it, and if you have to postpone it for the good in the future, it's also fine.
Thanks for those thoughts, Arnaud. Gabriel, I'm going to come back and close off with a few words from you about what to expect from the Geneva chapter. But to the other guys on the line, I wanted to give you each, say 10-20 seconds to just close off any last words or messages, and in particular, if anybody wants to learn more about your companies, how should they reach out to you? Seamus, do you want to maybe go first?
Yeah, Seamus Donahue. I think you can reach us, obviously the website, www.mitaku.com, or I'm on LinkedIn. Spelling's a bit tricky, DONOGHUE, and the first name Seamus, SEAMUS. Not going to make it easy for anybody. Please reach out if you're in this space and your potential partner. We're always building our ecosystem and provide basically potential access to our network of banks. And in the banking space, happy to explain the value proposition we can deliver to banks that want to incorporate digital assets.
Great. Thanks, Seamus. Arnaud, over to you.
We truly believe that in the future, in 10 years' time, 90% of the companies will manage their cap table on chain. They will be able to actually do their corporate actions directly on chain, which is something that we're going also to do for the first time, to have our General Assembly directly on chain within the wallet, so that people can participate virtually in the General Assembly. They can vote. They can actually even receive dividends, which is not something we're going to do this year, but this is like the whole ecosystem that we're building. We have more and more clients reaching to us to actually get into the digital world, to manage their cap table on chain, to be able to sell their shares in a token form to pretty much any type of investors, because at the end of the day, that's the same underlying, that's shares. So whether you sell it for 10 francs to someone, or whether you sell it for hundreds of K to some VCs or angels, that makes exactly the same thing. And we're trying to bridge the two worlds, and actually this thing is now happening, and we see that this general trend is actually not going to to go back, and that's the future. So if people want to reach us, easy, you go on the website mtpellerin.com and we'll be happy to help you.
Très bien, merci Arnaud. Julian, I wanted to give you the last word here to say a few things about your company and where we can contact you.
Thanks, John. So the usual, I would say you can reach us on the website www.uncrypted.ch, or you can ping me on LinkedIn and we will take it from there. We believe that it's an amazing opportunity in a sense what's happening. We see a big paradigm shift in the need for the company to digitalize. So we hope that a lot of the players are going to seize it, and if they believe they need help in this upcoming journey in order to unlock their blockchain potential, we'll be happy to help and reach out.
Great. Well, thank you, Julian. And yeah, lots of good options that we've heard about today amongst the current kind of events. So I won't go on and on and on. I did want to close out, though, by giving you, Gabriel, a quick moment to just share a few updates from Geneva. Is there anything else you'd like to mention about what's going on your side of the country?
Yeah, due to the situation, obviously, we were very sad that we had to put on hold our events, but we are still connected with many people. We are still open for new collaborations. So now we are basically still as early as possible. When it will be appropriate, we will start again with after work in Lausanne. We will do the same probably in Geneva. Events will start also again. We have about 2 or 3 events. We will publish the topics when it will be appropriate. Could be for this summer if possible, or otherwise will be in autumn. Also, we are working on building collaboration with other local associations which are preparing some other events. So we are very happy to collaborate with them, and also that our members can also profit from this event. And to contact me, the easiest way is really to reach me on LinkedIn. Just drop me a message, and I will be happy to call you back. And I will be happy also to see what we can do, what we can build together for a mutual benefit.
Well, thank you also, Gabriel, and yeah, to all the speakers. It's been an interesting time for us, as we heard, accelerating the shift to the digital economy and also to a more ecosystem-based way of getting things done in the future. New technologies are racing forward, so there's lots to talk about. Unfortunately, we can't do it in person as we always like to do, but we will be back next week on Wednesday. That's April 8th at 2 p.m. Central European time. We have a discussion with some of the local wealth tech companies about what's new in their business, looking a bit outside of Corona, so you won't hear me mentioning that on Wednesday next week. But thank you again today to Metico, Uncrypted, and also to Mount Pelerin, as well as Gabriel Lamon, our chapter head in the west of Switzerland. That was a really insightful discussion, and glad we got to hear all that's going on in Geneva. I look forward to catching up in a few months again. So thanks, guys.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you. Cheers. Thanks.